What's going on, guys? Welcome back. Today we're gonna jump right into things. I got my brother behind the camera today, uh, Mr. Trustee. That's his name. But today we're gonna jump right into things. We're gonna feed all the fish down here today. Show you guys everybody's eating, which I know we've done videos like this in the past, but these videos they never get old. Everybody wants to see the fish eating, see all the healthy fish. Make sure everybody is doing well and just do a little inspecting like I usually do. See if I got any fish down here holding or if I have any fish that are sick. So let's jump right into things. Let's not waste no more time. All right, guys. So just in case you guys was wondering who my brother is, that's him right there. Mr. Trustee, the ring light. All right, guys. So over here we got all our food. We got our pellet food here. Well, a carnivore pellet, which is a smaller carnivore pellet than the northern fin. I feed this to the stingrays. Then we got some regular pellet food here. We got a small pellet in that bag, and then we have a 3 millimeter pellet in that bag for the bigger fish. And then we have our bloodworms here and some brine shrimp here. So let's go ahead and start feeding some fish. All right, guys, so we're going to start off with the 300 feeding the stingrays. Like I said, I feed those guys these carnivore pellets, which are actually a nice size pellet. So let's feed them. We don't have to stick around to make sure that they eat all of it because they are definitely going to eat it all. I actually just, within the last 2 weeks, I start feeding these guys the bigger carnivore pellets, and they took to it quite nice. I still give them shrimp, but for the most part, I've been just feeding these guys the pellets because the pellets have everything that they actually desire as far as nutrition. But sometimes it takes them a little while to find the pellets, even though I always feed them over here on this side of the tank. Hence to why there's no substrate right there. But we won't waste too much time on those guys because they're sometimes they eat slow, sometimes they eat fast. Let's go over here. We got a lot of fish to feed, so I'm not going to stick around and just make sure that we watch them eat everything that I give them, because then this video would be 2 hours long. So we'll feed these little guys here, which are our baby. These are our baby polar blue parrots. We'll feed those guys a couple pellets. They're going to eat all that. As you guys can see, there's some big guys in there too. And the parents just laid another batch, so I don't know what I'm going to do with all these fish, guys. I got so many fish. It is ridiculous. Let's go over here to the discus tank. I actually been trying to get these guys to start eating on pellets, which they don't eat them fast, but I leave them in there and they'll nibble at it. And they're starting to take to it a little bit, but I really don't think they have the desire to eat pellets. They would rather me feed them shrimp like I have always fed them. Then over here in this tank, we got our ruby green African cichlids. This tank could use a cleaning, but I'm not too worried about it. Let's get those guys some pellets. All right, guys, so next we'll go down here to the bottom row. Feed these guys some pellets. Like I said, these guys over here in these tanks are a little camera shy because I don't really come over here too often. I just usually throw food in there and then I walk away. Excuse the camera. But I have to put a lot of food in here, as you guys can see, because we got all those Synodontis cats in there back in the back. It's probably like 50 of those guys back there in the back. So we'll skip this tank here. It's just a few feeders in there. We'll go over here to this tank where we got our baby peacocks at. It's a bunch of those guys in there. Eureka Reds. That's what these guys are. It's kind of hard to feed the fish and videotape at the same time. Alright guys, I had to adjust the camera. It was looking looked like it had some noise going on in it, so excuse that, but you guys can see they came out to eat. Everybody is hungry down here. Get the camera to focus on these guys. Alright guys, so over here on this side, we'll start on the bottom. There is a glare, so excuse that. Like I said, it's kind of hard to feed these guys and videotape. I'm going to give these guys a water change here after I get done recording and feeding these guys. And of course, they're not going to come out to eat until I move. But we'll go over here. These guys right here, they're always out. The red zebras. Looking good, putting on some real good size. And these guys always eat for me. All the fish always eat, but for some reason the yellow labs, they just, once I walk away, then they'll come up here, take the food, and go back into hiding. So no big deal. Then up here we got our Williamson Blue Lips. Excuse the camera, guys. I do have to hold it with one hand and then grab the food with the other hand, so it's going to be a little shaky. But there those guys go. Eating. Doing well. Putting on some good size. And these guys here, we won't even feed this tank because I already fed these guys. But as you guys can see, there are some babies in there. It's not many. They don't have that many babies anyway. These Swordtails. But there's probably like 10 or so babies in there. They usually stay up towards the top, which you can't see because of the light. But we got some babies in there, growing those guys out. And I did kind of cut down some of that guppy grass that was in there, but there's still a ton in there. But we did cut back on some of that. Then over here we got the all the mollies, and there's a few guppies in here, platies, stuff like that. So I feed these guys here. I feed these guys a flake food. I could feed them pellets, but I generally just feed these guys a flake food. The flakes actually last a lot longer than the pellets, as far as just like dissolving and stuff like that. I just think it's easier on these guys to eat the flakes. So let's put a bunch of flakes in there. There's some baby African cichlids in there too. I'm not sure if you guys can see them or distinguish which ones they are, but there are a bunch of baby African cichlids in there, little peacocks. All those guys with the stripes on them are all African cichlids. Those are the Eureka Red peacocks, which I'm going to be moving those guys down there with the bigger guys once they put on a little bit more size. All right, so now that we are out of that little nook over there, which is probably the hardest place down here to record, just because it's a tight space. We can go ahead, feed the Oscars. I get these guys this 3mm pellet. I get from a local breeder. You guys can see it says Mike's Color Chow on there. And this stuff here is amazing. It's amazing for color and growth. The growth of my fish is outrageous just from feeding them this Mike's Chow. As you guys can see, these guys are eating. I know the bishers will probably come out, but like I said, I usually don't feed those guys until the lights go off, just because the Oscars, they eat everything, so they'll eat anything and everything. So that way, once the lights go out, then I feed the bishers, because they're kind of nocturnal anyway. So that's generally when they really go on the hunt for food. But I get those guys a lot of pellets. I'm gonna feed them once on camera, and then I'm gonna feed them again off of camera, just because I haven't fed these guys since I put them in this tank, and it's been like 2 or 3. Well, it's been like 2 days since I put them in here, and I haven't fed them. So, and these guys, I don't know if you guys can see that, but they're picking up the gravel and the food. But of course, they'll spit the gravel back out. But these guys are doing good, eating a lot. Maybe the bishers might be able to get down there and get them a little bit of those pellets. But like I said, I'll give them some carnivore pellets anyway once the lights go out. So no worries on that. All right, guys, so let's move down here to the African cichlid tank. As you guys can see, everybody's over here on this side. But we got that power head on there, which pretty much disperses the food all over to the right side of the aquarium. And I don't feed these guys a lot at one time, just because when I do that, then they have a mouthful of food, and then the water column will just turn brown, and it's just not a good look for me. But I'll feed these guys 2 or 3 times, maybe sometimes 4 times a day, just to make sure that they're getting the right amount of food in them. As you guys can see, they put on a lot of size, so I'm doing something right. But that's those guys there. We won't spend too much time on any of these aquariums, just for the simple fact we got a lot to feed. All right, guys, so let's go to this aquarium here with all of our peacocks and stuff. And here we got a bunch of fish in here holding again. This is just like a never-ending cycle. There are always fish holding in here. I feed these guys the smaller pellet, and it does better in the water column. I put it like that. So there will be no debris or anything when these guys get done eating these pellets. This water will be crystal clear even when they get done eating. I put a lot of food in there. Even though it's small, it's still a lot of food. And I just think, to me, the smaller food, it dissolves. It just dissolves better. I think it's better on the fish rather than feeding these guys like a real big pellet. I just think the smaller food, it really just goes down better. The same thing it would be with a human, except for fish can't chew. So if you feed them a big pellet, they have to hold it in their mouth, kind of soften it up, and then be able to swallow it. But with the smaller food, they can take in a lot more, and it won't be all in the water column. So I'll come back and feed these guys again too, which I'm going to feed every fish down here multiple times, but we're only going to feed them one time on camera. Up here we got the baby crebences with the parents. I need to really trim this tank, but these guys are somewhere hiding. I'm just gonna throw some food in there, and then they'll come out and eat it later on, or whenever we move, they'll come out and eat. These guys are a little protective right now, the babies, until they get a little bit of size, so we won't spend too much time on that aquarium either. Go down here to the bristlenose tank with the other batch of crebencies. We'll feed these guys. Like I said, a lot of this is not, there's no excitement in it really, but we'll still feed them on camera. And then I will share a video with you guys, a small clip with these guys. It's like a feeding frenzy in this tank right here. Just because it's so many fish in there, so many plecos that you actually can't see. But there's a lot of fish in this tank. Like I said, there's probably 150 plecos in here. I'm pretty sure of that because I got like 2 or 3 batches in there. So then we got 1 batch of crebencies. These guys are growing at a crazy pace off the Mike's chow. Usually crebencies take a real long time to grow, but these guys are already putting on some real good size. Put a lot of food in there because there's a lot of fish in there. There's at least 200 fish in there. Or more. There's at least 150 plecos. And I'm pretty sure there's like 50 crebency babies in there, if not more. I don't even know if the camera is picking everything up, but we will do our best to get it in the footage so you guys can, well, that's a pretty good shot right there. It's not all the fish, but it's a lot of them. There's still probably 40 fish missing inside the tunnel and on the back side back there, but there is a ton of fish in this aquarium, guys. For it to be a 20 long, that's a ton of fish. But I do good water changes on it too, so. All right, guys, so over here we have our rainbow fish in this aquarium. I'm gonna feed these guys this brine shrimp. This is just like a sauce bottle that I feed them out of with a bunch of brine shrimp. I feed these guys pellets, and then I'll feed them brine shrimp or something like that, a bloodworm. I don't feed a lot of bloodworms, but once a week I will feed a lot of the fish down here bloodworms as a snack, but we'll just feed them the brine shrimp for now. It's actually easier to record, hold the camera, and feed them the brine shrimp because I got the squirt bottle. So you guys can see these guys are in a feeding frenzy in here, looking real good. Very happy with the decision I made moving these guys all into this aquarium with each other. Also, if you guys didn't know, rainbow fish are jumpers, so make sure you keep a tight lid on these guys because they will jump. They are notorious jumpers. All right, so next we're going to do the Nicaraguan aquarium. As you guys can see, these guys are ready to eat because I haven't fed anybody down here in like 2 days. I feed these guys a small pellet too, 1 millimeter pellet. And it has nothing to do with the size of the fish. It's just I just feel like this food, the smaller the pellet is just better on the fish. They'll consume the same amount as if it was a bigger pellet, but they can consume a lot more food if the food is smaller. They can consume a lot more, a lot faster. So I always overfeed the tank just to make sure that everybody is in there eating, or to make sure everybody gets their fair share, because we got some smaller fish in there. Like these guys, they're smaller, so there's no reason for anybody to be fighting over food or anything like that in there. We got all of our female African cichlids in there also. I know I told you guys that. I don't know how to sex them, so I usually strip them, and then I put the females in here with these guys just because I can't sex them. Some are easier to sex than others, but I don't have time to flip them upside down and vent them and all that stuff. So if they're holding their females, if they're colored up, they're males in most cases, but for sure, all these are females. So if anybody was to buy a trio from me, I will pull females from this tank and a male from the main tank. These guys here, let's feed the electric blue cars. Usually, I feed these guys a pellet first, and then I'll come back and I'll feed these guys brine shrimp. But for the video, I will feed them the brine shrimp just because it has been a few days since I fed these guys. So I want to get some food in them real quick. And to me, the brine shrimp and the pellet mix, like feeding them, I feed them 3 times a day, but I'll feed them pellets twice a day. Sometimes 3 times a day, but I definitely feed these guys the brine shrimp too, just because I feel like they need that meat in their diet. And that's probably another reason why these guys are so healthy, doing so good. Stomachs are not sunken, is because how much I feed them and what I feed them. All right, guys, so next we're going to feed the Turkana jewels. These guys are looking real amazing right now, man. They're looking real awesome. Colored up a lot. I feed these guys a lot. I feed these guys the 1mm pellet. Everybody down here pretty much gets a pellet. And I know it looks like a lot of food, but it's really not, just because of the size of the pellet. So those guys will have that cleared out here in the next 10 seconds. And then I'll put some more in, because there's a lot of fish in this tank. It's probably 100 fish in there. I don't know. 75 maybe. I really don't know. I don't keep track of how many fish there are in the tank, because I overpopulate my tanks anyway. That kind of just keeps the aggression down for me. So overpopulated tanks kind of do make you have to change the water more often depending on your filtration. Hence to why I added sponge filters to all my aquariums, because I was never running sponge filters on these aquariums because I had to hang on the backs. But I implicated the sponge filters because of the bio load in the tank and the amount of fish. So that way we don't have to do so many water. We don't have to change the water twice a week. We can still stick to our once a week water changes and just add in our air. All right, guys. So we'll feed the female beta tank. I just feed these guys Omega brine. It's a beta pellet. Feed them that. It's supposed to float, but it does both. It floats and it sinks. So some of it'll float, some of it'll sink. Feed those guys that. Should let our corridors are down at the bottom. We got some bottom feeders in there, but they'll get them some pellets once the pellets start to sink. And I just turned the lights on this tank, so these guys are not as active as they could be, but they're betas. They're not fast swimming fish anyway. So well, you guys can see that they are taking pellets. And they looking real good. All right, guys, so we're going to feed this tank here. It's only 2 fish, those 2 CPDs in there, and then we got some coolie loaches in here, so we won't put too much food in here. We'll put a little bit in there. The coolie loaches will take care of the rest, whatever the CPDs don't eat. And all the snails in there, they'll go down there and take care of it too. Next, we'll feed these guys up here, the Congo tetras. This is one of my favorite tanks to feed, which I usually feed these guys a pellet too. The same 1mm pellet that I feed the rest of the fish. But like I said, sometimes it's just easier to feed these guys the brine shrimp. All I have to do is come down here, squirt a bunch of it in there, they'll eat it. I come back later on, I feed them a pellet. And these guys have put on some real good size. They're nowhere near the size that they're going to be in adulthood, but this is a good size to buy them. These guys are showing some good color. You can already see the males from the females. But this has been one of my favorite tanks to come down here and just watch and just see the fish eating. Which these guys, they need, I'm going to upgrade these guys eventually to like a 55 or 75. I haven't figured that out yet. But once we get our Oscars moved and our bishers, which I plan on trying to get those guys into the 300. If I don't end up selling them, then I plan on taking these guys in here and putting these guys probably with the electric blue cars into the 125, but I'm not sure yet. But these guys are looking real good. I'm so impressed with the way they look and how good they're doing. All right, guys, so next up we got our clown loaches in here. I usually feed these guys a pellet also, but for the video, we're gonna just throw in a bunch of brine shrimp. And lately these guys have been coming out. So since the last video, these guys have been coming out. They've been showing a lot more interest on just swimming around and not paying me any attention. So that's always a good thing when it comes to clown loaches, because these guys are really frantic. They like to dart a lot and just do their own thing. They're not really social unless there are other fish in there with them, or unless there's a lot of clown loaches around, which I've had hundreds of them at one time, and they did real good all together. But as you guys can see, these guys are eating. People always ask me a question about the clown loaches. They always say, "Oh, have you treated them for parasites or some kind of disease that they get?" But I haven't had any problems with them. They always eat for me. Nobody's looking real skinny or showing signs of any problem. So if they're not showing signs of any issues, I'm not going to stress them out by treating them with a bunch of medication that's unnecessary. All right, guys, so we're going to move on over here to the ghost knives. Like I said, I usually feed these guys this carnivore pellet, but today I'm going to feed, well, just for the video purposes, I'm going to feed these guys some of these blood worms, but that's only for the video purposes, because these, I mean, they'll eat it, but I really prefer for these guys to eat pellets, just so that way when I do sell them to whoever buys them, I can assure those guys that they are eating pellets and they're not eating. Blood worms is a bad thing to feed your fish, as far as I'm concerned. Frozen blood worms, live blood worms, that's a different story. But frozen blood worms, they're just not good for your fish. And I really don't recommend feeding it. But every now and again, I will give them some just because I had a whole pound of it in the freezer. So instead of throwing it away, I just feed it to these guys once a week until it's gone. And then I probably will never buy it again, to be honest with you guys. It's not a food that's one of my favorites. It's not something I feed my fish anyway. So, but you guys see them, they're eating. Everybody hasn't come over to eat, but like I said, I'm gonna feed these guys again. I'm gonna feed them some pellets. So the guys that are not eating right now will come out and eat some pellets eventually. Let's put some food over here for the guys over there that did not get none. Make sure they at least know that the food is in there, because there's some big guys in here. It might not look like it on camera, but these guys are like 6 inches. That guy back there is huge. And I've had these guys for quite a while, so just growing them up, growing them out a little bit. Some people tend to like the bigger fish, some like the smaller fish. So at all the swaps I go to, I take a few big ones and a few small ones. I usually take more small than big just because the price is, unbeatable on the small guys. These are usually the first guys to go. The ghost knives and the bishers are the first fish I sell at every swap. All right, guys, so this tank here is really low to the ground, so I'm going to have to pick the camera up. But we got a bunch of crabencies in here that are reaching adulthood. And we got maybe 1 or 2 coolie loaches in here to get these snails under control. And then we have 1 Cynodontis in here just for bottom feeder purposes. So let me try to feed these guys. This is going to be a tough one, guys, because this tank is low. I have to lift the lid up with the food in my hand. So this may not be good, guys. This could be a disaster. All right, I got it. There's the food. So I usually try to feed these guys right here over the terracotta pot, just so these guys know where the food is going to be, and they don't have to search around, sifting through the sand, trying to find food. I do see some nice males in there starting to really look good, man. I'm never worried about having females because I know there's always going to be females. It's really the males that's my concern. But we do have quite a few in there. And it's actually some imperfect ones in there. I don't know if you guys can really tell. But like this guy right here is like got a crooked, like a kink in his spine or something like that. And so does this one over here. So I won't be selling those guys. I will probably just put those guys over in the tank with the I'll probably put those guys in the tank with the mollies and the guppies and stuff like that, and just let them live it up in there, because I can't sell anybody a fish that has a kink spine or crooked back or anything like that. Which these guys, they came to me like this, so I guess that's the joys of, not going to the store and actually picking out your fish. But when you have so many, I guess it doesn't really matter. Everything's not going to be perfect. All right, guys, so in this tank here, we got a bunch of coolie loaches, and we got a pair of lemurs in here. It's a 10-gallon. Everybody is hiding in the back. There's one of those lemurs. Came out to the front to eat. And like I said, we won't spend too much time on these aquariums because these fish in here are kind of small. So we got about 100 baby sulfurhead African cichlids in there. Those guys are hiding in the back. And over here we got our pair of polar parrots that their babies have finally hatched back there. So these guys will come eat once I move, but for right now they're on guard. So I just put a little food in there for them to come out and eat whenever they feel like it. Over here we'll start with these guppies. I just give these guys some pellets. There's a bunch of babies in there swimming around. They'll just pick at the pellets, and whenever they want to eat them, they'll eat them, the little babies that are in there swimming around. So, and we'll go over here to these blood red swordtails over in this tank. These guys are definitely going to eat. They growing pretty good. Once they start growing, then they put on some good size pretty quick. So I'm pretty happy with that I'm able to carry this line on for as long as I've been having it. It's been about a year at least since I had this line. So I'm gonna keep working with it, see what I can do with it, and hopefully things just keep progressing with this with the blood red line. Then over here we got a hunter fishing here. Bunch of swordtails in here. I mean, we got a bunch of sulfur heads in here and some yellow labs in there. I said swordtails. Far from swordtails, guys. Very far from a swordtail. But these guys are doing real good, looking good, and eating good. All right, guys. So next to the African cichlids, we have the baby bishers. Now these guys I've been feeding live. Like I said, I'm not going to feed them live on camera, but I've been trying to get these guys to eat some carnivore pellets, which there is a few in there that actually do take the carnivore pellets, but maybe that guy right there, well, yep, there's one of them. He just took a little carnivore pellet, which is a good thing. I'm really trying to get these guys on pellets, man. I don't want to have to run to the store and keep buying feeders for these guys. So I'll drop a few back there. Let these guys smell it. Hopefully they will take to it. Eventually I'll get them on. I'll probably have to get these guys on some shrimp or something. They need a meaty diet. Let's go down here to the sump. I don't have a light down here, but my red terror is in here, my female. Throw some pellets in there for her. As you guys can see her, she done got super big. So I don't have any fish down here that big, but I might just throw her in the 300, but I don't want her to go after the stingrays either. So that is the only reason why I haven't put her in there with the stingrays, is because I don't want her to end up taking any eyes out in that tank. Excuse the camera, guys. It is very, very shaky. But we got all of our fish in here, as you guys can see. I just feed these guys a 1mm pellet also. And these guys are doing awesome in their new tank. Just awesome. Got the red terrors in there. We got the Severums in there, and we got the Rarus in there. These guys are doing great, man. I'm happy I moved them to this tank. They actually being a little bit more social, not so much aggression going on in the smaller tank. So I'm pretty happy with that move. Make sure everybody's eating. These guys, man, the Rarus, they acquire a lot of food, y'all. Like, I know I have said this previously, but these guys, they eat. They eat a lot too. They worse than African cichlids. African cichlids, they eat a lot of food too, but man, these rawroos, these guys will eat you out of house or home if you let them. But there's a lot of fish in there, so I put a lot of food in there. So I'll let them guys consume that, and then we'll go ahead and wrap this thing up, guys. All right, guys, so that's going to wrap it up for today. I just wanted to come through, do a quick feeding as quick as I could without trying to hold you guys here for too long. Not having a cameraman really sucks, and it does take quite a while to try to do everything, holding the camera, make sure you get the right camera angles, and just, it's a lot, guys. It really is, and it kind of sucks, but we do what we do to get it done. No complaining, we just get it done. That's what we do. So I'm going to go ahead and get out of here, guys. So until next time, remember, always feed the fish. Holla.